So are we live? We are live on again here from Aarhus, where we are following the Round Denmark race. Bauer Becking and crew are tagging their way back from Bornholm in the Baltic, and while they are having a good time in the Baltic Sea in like 30 knots of wind, we are having a good time here in the studio, talking to interesting people, and among them is Jan Møller, who is the fastest Dane solo around the world. I can start with that introduction. Jan, please take it away from here.
Yeah, I think we are two of us, and the other guy he didn't want to race, so that made it simple. No, back in 2003-4, I sailed around the world, single-hand, non-stop, in 168 days, Copenhagen to Copenhagen. So in an open 40, so a boat that in some ways predates the Volvo 65 that you are looking at today, and with canting keel and full carbon and ultimate sail and the whole story. And I had a blast. But to get to the blast, you have to get through the overtures, and it started out with a failed attempt back a year earlier, and a extremely steep learning curve. Because how do you get to be a single-hander? That's a big question, which I can talk long and much about it. But before stealing the microphone from Morten, basically my ambition back then was as a project and a lifelong dream of sailing around the world, and I had nobody who wanted to sail with me. Found out this thing about sailing non-stop solo around the world was not a Scandinavian thing, so I actually became the first Scandinavian doing that. And the idea with this was to get a job in the marine sector. And today I'm sitting here with I think it was that with in Lopolite, which I founded together with a friend that I met through this project. So this thing about single-handed can lead to a lot. It's a good career. And since then I've taken it up and then sailing more leisurely in a small boat in local waters. Yeah.
Yes, I wrote that in the intro to the to this show that nowadays you sail your Aphrodite 101 and do lots of races here in Denmark primarily, I think it is. And well, you're still a keen racer. You just won the Round Zealand race, right? You beat your brother.
That was a great race. Because my 101 is a very narrow boat, has absolutely no stability, so don't give it too much wind, and it's a very open, very low boat, and that means that there's a reason why I'm only sailing in Denmark, because the boat doesn't go into the North Sea. That would be asking too much. And I was just thinking about Bo and the team that they're beating upwind in the Baltic away from Bornholm. I did that with my boat a couple of years ago in the Round Denmark race, and the keel nearly fell off. So I found the limits of that one. Now it's stronger than new, but it was a bit of an experience and told me what limits that boat has.
The Baltic Sea can be a challenge, I think, maybe even for a VO 65. We're going to find out when they get back tomorrow if it was a tough beat. I think it is.
The waves are square, they don't have this normal shape, and they fit a lot of waves into a distance, so they are slamming. So that's not fun.
Okay, Jan, what you also did, well, that was some years later than you started Lopolite up, and after your circumnavigation, you entered you and Erik, who we talked to earlier on today, founded the Scandinavian Singlehand Sailing Association. I think it is the name in English. How come you did that?
Well, that is you probably heard from Eric that his inauguration in single-handed sailing was this around Zealand in 2014, where there was a little bit of a ruckus about the other competitor not being able to stay awake and bringing himself a little bit in jeopardy, and there was a outroar from all the naysayers, which you also can find in sailing, and the whole thing about single-handed is dangerous and it should be prohibited and the whole thing. And together with Katrine Bertelsen, Erik, and myself, we founded this association with the objective of promoting safety at sea, promoting, giving ourselves a voice, and to influence the powers in charge, coming with good ideas. And it's just good to be an association when you want to have a say around the table. And the other aspect was that we wanted to create some fun races for the single-handers, so that we can get together. And it's a pretty oxymoron thing that that the single-handers, they seem to be a very jolly crowd, and they love to get together and obviously talk about the things they can't talk with their crew about. We share this bond, the bond that I guess has been one that ever since the Golden Globe race back in the day, there was this acute feeling about, if you get in trouble, and I tell you, a single-handed, you can get in trouble very easily. If you get in trouble, your competitor is the most likely savior of yours. So you better be on friendly terms with him. And now we're just looking at my good friend Mike Golding's sailing as a hired hand on Hydra. And Mike is a great example of him and Alex Thompson. They had a rivalry going that was not pretty. But at the second, when Alex was lost at sea and his boat was sinking, Mike spent not a second thinking about the risk for him turning around in a storm in the Southern Ocean, going back, saving the guy, and losing his mast in the whole operation. But he saved the guy, and I think those two guys, they have a very strong friendship today, and it's just a testimony that your competitor is also a friend, and we are facing the same, not enemy, but with the same challenges, being out at sea. So there you go.
Okay, so the Singlehand Association, it leads me to Round Denmark race, because you kind of invited me in, which I'm happy about, to try to put some, shall we say, vitamins into the Round Denmark race, and I hope that we will succeed in that in 2021 when we have the first edition of the new Round Denmark race. The race is open for normally boats and stuff, for fully crewed and for double-handed, but also for single-handers, as you guys started the whole thing. But still, I also talked a bit to Erik about it. How is it even possible to go single-handed, in your opinion? How is it even possible to go single-handed 650 miles in Danish waters?
That's the great thing. It's impossible, and that's what we have to, because what do we as humans in today's world, we are striving to get challenges and get challenged, and this is one of the great challenges. And I just did the Round Zealand race, and that was 43 hours in one go, and obviously that's a toughie, and especially when you are navigating in very close waters with a lot of traffic in both Øresund and Storebælt, and that leaves you very little options for rest. So you have to strategize your race, and the same thing goes with Round Denmark. It's the first editions we did of the Round Denmark race was we went in belts and braces with safety, and we had this mandatory 8-hour stopover in 5 harbors around Denmark, and we had people who would sign up for the race and say, well, that can't be a problem, and we would not comment on that, because we would talk to them after leg 3, where they had their eyes hanging down and they were exhausted to the nth degree, and they finding out that managing your resources, you are the softest, weakest, most vulnerable aspect on that boat, and you as the skipper, and you break so easily, and you have to preserve that, and in that contest of managing your resources and preserving yourself, not getting injured, not getting worn out, not getting disillusioned, not getting sick of it all, you are in the process of learning a great deal about yourself, and that's pretty modern. From my round the world trip, the toughest part was when I sailed in congested waters in the Kattegat, North Sea, the English Channel, because you could only rest for about 30 minutes at a time. And this is the case for Round Denmark also, is that you can possibly only rest for 20 minutes, sometimes a little longer, and it's always with a little bit of a consideration to safety you do it. But I think having this concept, this format where in Round Denmark race, where you choose your own resting period and you strategize around that, just gives another set of flavor to it, where the other thing in the old days was more you had a clock you had to run to, and I tell you, you would like to stay in your bunk after 6 hours and you are exhausted, the whole thing is wet, and then you have to go out and sail again. It's not really what's on the agenda, but no. Now you have to be proactive about it, and you have to learn how to sail yourself. And
maybe we could just say that the old format was a stage race. You can say that it was like, was it 6 or 7 stages where you were, where the legs were between 80 and maybe 130 or something like that nautical miles, and you had to go into the harbor and be there for, like, was it 8 hours?
8 hours from passing the finish line to the start line. So that means that the commute to the harbor, the whole the whole thing. So you only had a gross of 8 hours. So if you were really smart, you got 6 hours of sleep. And there were some of the competitors who had a very strong shore crew set up that enabled them to get a lot of resting time. And the rest of us, we got along. I had great shore crew support, but I was not asking them to help me as much. Next time around, I'll probably do that. But that's another story. You go into that race with a lot of assumptions about your own strengths, and you come out a lot wiser and a lot weaker. But that's how it is. And then
just to clarify, then the new format is that it's much more, should we say, flexible. You don't have to go into certain harbors. You have to pick, as you said before, you have to do your own strategy and find good places or spots to. In the ideal world, when the wind is down, you can drop the sails and have a sleep, and then when the wind comes back, then you can continue sailing. But But what if it's a gale for 5 full days? What will your strategy be then?
It is, I can say it in this way. Safety has always and has to be at the very forefront of everything we do as single-handers, because you have to finish before you can finish first, and preserving yourself, one, alive, and secondly functioning, and then being able to sail your boat. It means that we have put a lot of qualifying into the notice of race, so that you had to have a certain level of competency before entering the Round Denmark race, and I certainly believe that should also be the case for the coming versions. And the reality is, the man will give up before it becomes dangerous. That's what we learned, is that the single-hander, he will know his limitations and quit before it gets dangerous. Obviously, we are not masters over gear failure or stuff like that. Last year around Denmark, we had a example of great seamanship. One of our competitors, he broke his rudder in the Kattegat, and but he was able to get control over his boat, and to call for assistance, not in the rescue environment, but in an assistance environment, and got to Anholt, fixed his own boat, put a new rudder in, and sailed home. So that was a great act of seamanship. The sailors, we found out that they're quite knowledgeable about what they do. What we are scared about, to be honest, is to get Rambo into the race, or get the guys in who, and we have all seen them. We know they're out there, and we're scared about the guys who doesn't know themselves enough and pushes on and gets into trouble. So we really want to have single-handers in such races that have a keen sense of understanding of themselves and their own limitations, and within that they want to challenge themselves. And it's that's also the reason why there is there will be a tracking requirement. There is a safety equipment requirement. There is a requirement for the skipper to have done overnight races, such as Digby or Silver Rudder, or some of the feeder races that you can imagine for Round Denmark. And you should not attempt single-handing around Denmark without having done a number of these, because that's...
No, I agree on that. I think that's a good point, that you should have tried at least one of these races before you try to go out in a 650 miles long race in as you said, congested areas with heavy traffic. So
but we have some shortcuts. I'd like to promote those, because what we are doing in the Scandinavian Singlehand Association is that we are arranging the most unfair race in history, called Anholt Lone Star. And the idea is, Anholt is sort of in the middle of Denmark, and that you start from your own harbor, no commute to the starting line. Well, it's only a few hundred meters, and then you start on your assigned starting time. And the idea is that everybody comes to Anholt at the same time. Obviously, those who have a downwind race, they have it a little bit easier than those who have an upwind race, but that's how it is. You never know. But in that environment on Anholt where we are together, not only drinking beer, we are sharing experiences, and we are talking about what we have learned, what are good races, how do you manage your boat, how do you have any tricks, come down and look at my ship, and all kinds of things that promotes quick learning, and obviously also knits together the team so that when we get into a sharp situation out there, it's easy to call the other guy because you know him. So Anholt Lone Star in late August is great, and it's a good feeder down to Vegvisir. The other thing is that we also do speeches, and we go out in the clubs and talk about what makes a good single hand race. How do you prepare? How do you plan? What do you do? Everything from physical preparation to preparing your boat, to having the actual race planning, talk about road books, and talk about all the tools that people, especially in the French and the English environment, has been so good in developing. So we are trying to learn from each other, and that's the real key, is that we get smarter to do this, and that we get more fun out of it. You're more competent you are managing your boat, less scared you are, and the more fun you have, and quicker you sail, by the way, and it all goes together. And that's I think that's a strong aspect of having, with we have in our little environment a lot of people who has a lot of miles. I can talk about Jens Als Andersen, who sailed O-Star several times and sailed around the world, and he knows a lot. Erik Jager Pandrup, who's our chairman, he's very strong on this on the commercial relationship side, and has spent in numerous hours at sea, and we are developing our skills together, and we are developing our competency level all together. So that's we have to.
I think it's fair to say that we are kind of in a what you would call it, in a process of building a culture in not only in Denmark but in I'd say in Scandinavia and northern Germany. There's a lot of German sailors who come and compete in these races, both here and in Sweden. And I think this short-handed, single-handed, and double-handed culture is really having momentum at the moment, and I think that we can help promoting that, both in your association, but also by attending races and events like in Anholt Lone Star, and also races like Round Denmark Round race. Sorry.
Absolutely, and one of the things that I keep saying is that this is not only about single-handed. It's about sailing. It's about being a better skipper in the context of that. Imagine that you have done some single-handed racing. You have spent a lot of time in your boat, and you've been managing that, get confidence around it. Imagine that same person inviting guests on board. What kind of confidence he will exude, and what kind of much better experience the guests will have on board, whether it's the close family or somebody else, because first of all, they know he can handle his boat himself. Secondly, the skipper knows that he is not dependent on anyone. Obviously people are happy to help, and they should, but it gives much more pleasurable experience for the guests, and they might someday be sailors themselves, and so we can spin this positive side of it, because we're all single-handers once in a while, whether it's sailing the boat from the mooring to the crane, or whether it's a small delivery, and the techniques, the tools, the autopilot, whatever, the better they are, the more safe we are, and more fun we have, and the whole thing spins.
Okay, I think that was a nice final comment, Jan, unless you have anything else on your mind right now.
No, I look forward to Round Denmark race next year. It's going to be fun. I hope that there'll be a lot of guys, especially in the single and double hand regime, because that's where the challenge is, in my opinion. But it's great.
Tell that about baking.
Sorry? What? I didn't hear you.
I said, tell that to Bauer Becking.
Yeah. He needs a challenge, I think.
Yeah,
and it's not as expensive as putting all these guys on a boat. So
that's true. That's true. Yeah. But I agree. But and I hope also, of course, that it's going to be interesting for me to invite fully crewed boats into this what I call adventure sail racing format, where you don't compete by measurement rules and stuff, but just by being the faster boat. So I think we have a nice year coming up in 2021, and I hope to see a lot of single-handers and double-handers and fully crewed boats. So I think that's it for now. Anything else to add?
No, I'm just happy, and for the rest of you out there, you would wonder why we brought somebody like Morten into Round Denmark race. Is basically he's a very gifted ambassador and really gifted marketeer, and I think the foundation we put in the Round Denmark race needed somebody like you. So I'm really stoked to have you on board, and I look forward to the cooperation.
Thank you, Jan. See you later, and we log out now.
Okay.